So we've got a few people. So you don't think drugs are bad, but you've never used them. That's a very smart legal position to take. Okay, so this talk, I'm calling it Drugs as Tools because I'm at a transhumanist meetup, and so I've made it. This talk I wanted to give is actually inspired, I think, yeah, I'll get to that in a second. It's actually inspired by all the MDMA overdoses lately and the way the media is covering it. And I have become a little bit obsessed with this topic over the past 6 or 7 years, and I wanted to break down some of these stereotypes and myths that are out there. And Peter asked me if I wanted to talk at this, and it's like drugs and transhumanism actually go together very well. And so it's just an opportunity to talk about that a little bit. But so this is a joke that I enjoy quite a lot. But you all know that already because what's drugs? These are all drugs. We have drugs around us. And yes, as I was saying, this is the reason I want to give it. It's been in the headline a lot lately. You've probably noticed everyone's talking about it. And we have a premier who doesn't understand, obviously, anything about drugs. The fact that, these headlines keep saying MDMA overdoses shows that they don't really understand the problem. Yes, you can overdose on MDMA. But if these were all MDMA overdoses, we would be seeing similar levels of overdose over the past 40 or 50 years. 80s? How long now? 40? Not 50. But yeah, 20, 30, 40 years. But we haven't. MDMA deaths are really quite rare in the scheme of things. And to suddenly, there's been 9 deaths in the past month or something. This is not suddenly everyone changing their behaviour. Populations don't work that way. Something has changed. So, we'll talk about that in a minute. First thing is, I am not an expert on this topic. I am not qualified in anything to do with drugs or sociology of drugs or any of that. I studied molecular biology and philosophy, so I know a bit about biology, the chemistry and biology, but this is a hobby of mine, and my job today is not to tell you anything. I'm not here to be the expert. I'm here to present some information, but mostly my objective is to challenge your biases and hopefully introduce some ideas to you that will inspire you to go and research it yourself. Because that's what I did. I just researched it on the web, so I'm basically a doctor now, because that's how the internet works. But if you want to hear an actual expert, David Nutt, he's talking down in Melbourne, and I thought that we weren't going to see him. But then I found out, while preparing for this just 2 or 3 days ago, he's talking in Sydney. This is at UNSW during the day. You can't see the date on that. It is, the 19th of February. And then I tweeted at him, yay, and he said he's also doing this. So this is on the 16th of February. And that costs quite a bit of money. I'm just going to turn up and see if they let me in. Because I don't have any money. So the connection to transhumanism. This is the classic sort of idea of drugs in the transhumanist world, is this: in the future, we'll have the ability to take a pill and we'll make you smart and fast and strong and creative. You'll be able to see colours better. This is the transhumanist dream. And Limitless is probably one of the best renditions of that concept. And even in that movie, I think there's some side effect or consequence, which is kind of the uncertainty we have of this belief, this desire to have this perfect drug is it actually possible to have a perfect drug without side effects? We've got no evidence that it is, it's just a hope. And so one of the things I will want to talk about in my talk, which is actually going to be a choose your own adventure talk, which I haven't got to yet, is that what if we can't reach this perfect drug without side effects? What if the best we've got is drugs with side effects? And then how do we look at the drugs that we have? What if we've got this plethora of chemicals already available to us that we know are functionally safe, depending on variables, that have some side effects, but they're manageable, and we're being lied to about the nature of them and stopped from using them because of potential risks, or completely ignoring the fact that everything in life has risks. So David Nutt, this guy, I didn't even mention his name, sorry, David Nutt, on his academic, he was a psychiatrist, so a medical doctor, became neuropsychopharmacologist, so totally expert in the field. But when he signs his papers, his name on papers is DJ Nutt, which is the best name ever for someone who researches drugs. Why don't I go back to him was, I completely interrupted myself. Sorry? DJ Nutt. Yeah, did you go back to him though? I was going towards a point. And I've lost it now, so it mustn't matter. Okay.
Side effects.
Side effects.
Can we achieve? If it's the only choice.
If it's the only choice, no, I've still lost it. rubbish. All the drugs I take, no.
It was
They actually really good.
to what if drugs with side effects is the only choice that we have?
Yes. It's a really good point. I can't remember why I went back to him. Doesn't matter, it'll come back to me later, because what's happening now is I have about 2 hours worth of content and not 2 hours worth of time. So what I've decided to do is this slide is going to be my entire talk. It's 10 dot points, and it's basically just going to be my 10 conclusions. And what I want you to do is react as each one comes up. You don't have to. If you don't feel anything, don't react. But if it comes up and you go, oh no, that's crap, say, nah. If it's like, whoa, what? Like I didn't know, go, what? Something, just reaction, whatever you feel. If you go, that's awesome, yeah. Make some noise if you feel it. If you don't make any noise. And then I'll just sort of guess what people want to hear about. And then I'll go to one of those things, because choose your own adventure talk. We might get 2 or 3, we'll see. So drugs, meaning illegal drugs, is a terrible nonsense category. Illegal drugs are not necessarily safer or better for you than illegal drugs. The war on drugs is and has always been deeply racist and political. I like that one, we've got some conflict. No one has ever died from an acid overdose, yet people die from alcohol poisoning every day. The media perpetuate myths about illegal drugs and exaggerate their dangers. See, I knew everyone was going to agree with that because everyone just hates the media. So I won't go that way, but I can just say right now, a study was done in Scotland over the course of at the end of the 90s, looking at toxicology of deaths and looking at, from the toxicology, you can see what chemicals were present in their body at the time of death. Doesn't mean it killed them, but it was present. And then looking at the media stories associated with each death. And surprise, surprise, every single person that died with MDMA in their system, not MDMA killed them, was in their system, got a story about 5 people. 5 stories. The 286 people that died with paracetamol in their blood, though, 1 story. Probably wasn't about the paracetamol, though, was it? Just happened to be about the person.
Do you think they exaggerate? I think because the media doesn't talk about drugs. They talk about the result of the abuse of. So they don't talk about people taking ecstasy. They talk about the deaths. So they're really talking about the deaths. They don't really talk about anybody using anything.
But
they talk about a very bad result.
The paradigm around this topic is if you use MDMA, you're abusing MDMA.
Yeah, but does the media do any difference between drugs and death and child molesters? They talk about the bad causes of something, particularly the results that are bad.
It's complex. Let's.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
but there's an intense bias. Like all the things of people dying in MDMA overdose, it's like, oh no, these poor kids are dying because they've made bad life decisions. Yeah. Maybe they didn't make bad life decisions. Maybe they're being poisoned by unkempt markets, by all these things. But the media presents it as this dichotomy which creates the narrative around the story. So, let me get through my 10. Yeah, it's just 10. Yeah. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It is connection. Well, actually, and that one is just, who's interested in talking about addiction? Addiction's an interesting topic, I think.
What do you mean by connection?
Interpersonal connection primarily, but it can be connection to anything. That is actually a sort of paraphrase of an author that wrote about addiction, a book called Chasing the Screen. Changed my whole perspective of addiction intensely. Research chemicals are flooding the market and killing people. Potentially. Know your drugs, the real dangers, drug interactions, safe dosage, etc. So this is not something you react to, but it's like, are you interested in this? A bit, got some nods. Modern research into medical uses for illegal drugs. Is this? Yeah, see? That's like, you probably know a lot about that already. It's possibly the least interesting thing because it's like, mushrooms are being used to treat depression, ketamine's used to treat treatment of resistant depression, MDMA for post-traumatic stress disorder. What else is there? Sorry? For lots of things, but also not as much research on it's like, oh my god. The last one, drugs as tools. Why do people take illegal drugs? Yeah. Okay.
I think illegal needs to be defined too.
Yeah. So where do I go? Yeah, Leo.
So Shanti's got a little belt pack so you can come around and help people talk a little bit. So if anyone wants to put their hand up, Shanti will come running out over. And she'll have to be near you anyway, which is all good for you. So did you want to define
up on the microphone?
So did you want to define illegal?
Hello.
I can in a second. Illegal is against the law.
No, I mean as in there are a lot of drugs
Yeah.
that are legally prescribed, but not illegal drugs. But if you get caught with it without a prescription, you're fucked.
So I'm using it literally, I'm intentionally using it as the way that people sort of casually relate to it in society, because that's how people relate to this topic, is through those biases.
Okay, cool.
And it's not clear because, amphetamine, I have a script for it and I can use amphetamine every day, but most people obviously don't use it.
And with number 10, as you point out, there's, with acid and ecstasy has just been pushed forward massively because it's got some great results in PTSD. And like we've got someone in our family with PTSD from the military, so they're about to start prescribing pharmaceutical grade ecstasy. But it's only a hit thing. You only need to do it a couple of times. So it's not an ongoing thing.
And they're both still intensely illegal and put you in prison if you caught with them.
Yeah, but there's actually I think it's about half a dozen what we consider recreational drugs that are all being re-examined heavily.
They all started as medical as well.
Yeah.
Before they
started out,
Then they found out they were fun, so they made them illegal.
So there was two questions. One of them was touching on what he said, which is in terms of, I guess, the illegality of them, or not illegality of them, and the classification of them.
Yeah.
1 second, because I forgot about that, but there was the main point. Is there anything, do you think that the war, going back to those, the war on drugs, is that the one, I'm looking for one there that treats them as a product or service and the monetary aspects around it, like why a drug would rather be financially better being illegal than legal, or the case against that you see, is that a topic or is that something?
Yeah, you're right, it's not in there.
Yeah.
And it's something I have actually written about in the past because I've written an article, if I were in charge, the first thing I would do would be to legalise all drugs. And there's some very good arguments for that, and one of them is the economic, because currently the economics of illegal drugs is to take money from citizenry and direct it into the black market, where they grow their gangs and their weapons stashes and their networks and their manufacture without any sort of oversight or regulation, therefore able to cut it and do whatever they want to it because there's nothing stopping them and they're already on the outside of the law. So if they break another law, who cares? People die, who cares? They're going to get thrown in prison anyway. So they live recklessly because they can, and it's actually, game theory kind of thinking, they may as well. And they get rich and people die. But if you legalise them, then you can take that money, billions of it, and it gets directed towards the government at least, or towards private enterprise, depending how it gets set up. And that money that goes to the government can be reinvested into medical treatment, addiction treatment, education in high school, and all sorts of positive feedback loops to help save people's lives and teach people how to not die using drugs.
What's the negative side of that though?
So the main counter argument is typically along the lines of, if it's available then everyone will use it. But I'm not, and maybe some use of some drugs will go up. I'm not at all convinced that it will, and we've got plenty of counter evidence when this has happened, like for example with marijuana use in places where it's been legalised. Not everyone starts using marijuana. Most Dutch people I've met have never smoked marijuana. And it's because they grow up with it and they don't care. It's not exciting to them.
A lot of places in the States where marijuana was illegal and now it's legal, a lot of the places that can't afford the legality regulation part of it, right, becoming legal, they keep their prices low. So the places that it's legal, it's obviously going to be more expensive because there's tax involved. And so what they're finding is people still choose the illegal version of marijuana because there's no tax and it's cheaper.
Yeah, and with marijuana that's easy to do because it's a plant you grow, right? So with something like methamphetamine or heroin, whatever, most people can't just produce that. And so the black market may still exist, but the black market exists in tobacco as well, and cigarettes and whatever. It will always exist, but you don't have the same problems with the black market of tobacco as you have with meth and heroin and all these other ones. because it's small. And it's better if I'd rather have a small black market than everything being a black market.
So, put that argument aside, what about other negatives about it?
Because I haven't thought about it in this talk, and Leo's thrown me a curveball, I haven't thought about it for years, so I can't.
Okay, so I'll give you sort of a bit of thing. One of the areas that law enforcement doesn't, because I'm involved in law enforcement.
Yep.
One of the key issues is very similar. Why doesn't the US government just kill off Kim Jong-un or Saddam Hussein, things like that? Because if you take the drugs away from all the crime gangs, what do they replace it with?
Functional lives?
No, you can't do that. I mean, you can't just say, hey, go and be nice guys. The question is,
But do you think they're there because they're just bad guys?
No.
Because it's an opportunity they have.
A lot of them. I mean, hey, small people, street people, no one cares, right? It's like they're struggling. The big people will backfill it with something else. That might be worse.
Probably average everyday capitalism and taking advantage of normal employees.
So that's actually one of the major concerns, because there's a lot of analysis about it, and they'll actually get far more into direct crime, such as from kidnapping and violence and explosions. There's a big discussion about the cartels and a few of the others actually heading in towards terrorism, and actually a few other things like that. So the question is like, what will replace if you take? I'm not saying they should not do it because of that.
And it's a terrible argument, because it's like, well, we shouldn't do anything against any crime, because then those criminals will move to new crimes.
I'm not saying they shouldn't.
Harder,
What I'm saying is, it's one of the things that is discussed of, okay, what will they backfill it with? In the US, because there's so many different drugs, marijuana was one of those ones that was easy to let go.
Yeah.
Because there's still a lot of other stuff that these guys are doing. Because if you take a lot of it away, like when they target the bikie gangs and certain things, they backfill with other financial crime, fraud crimes.
It's probably also diluted at every step, right? Like the tobacco concept. There's a black market in tobacco, but it's nowhere near as big as a black market. It's illegal, right?
But I'm saying it is something that they are worried about. What will they do if you take that away?
It's definitely not a.
They just keep the same business but do it legally.
That's
that's a main concern, that you wouldn't legitimize what they do, so you know they're killers, you know they're kidnappers, but now they're doing it legally. It's the same with prohibition. They're exactly the same people that were running these massive, illegal alcohol rates.
This is many
made
areas.
legal because then they got the power and.
Okay, so this was the one that caused the most dissent, the most confusion. So these are, prohibitionist era signalese ones. This is what's informed. So this, I did actually have a slide about the different types of drugs, but different categories, but we wanted to get to racism. So, I'm just going to read this. The first anti-drug law in the USA was a local law in San Francisco passed in 1875. It outlawed the smoking of opium and was directed at the Chinese because opium smoking was a peculiarly Chinese habit. It's believed that the Chinese men were luring white women to have sex in opium dens. In 1909, Congress made opium smoking a federal offence by enacting the Anti-Opium Act. It reinforced Chinese racism by carving out an exception for drinking and injecting tinctures of opiates that were popular among whites. So the way the Chinese people did it was illegal, the way the whites did it, fine. Shortly following that, they did exactly the same thing with marijuana, when they changed it from marijuana with a H to J, so that it looks even more Mexican, because they pronounce the J's with her, and they associated with Mexicans smoking it. And then you have this quote. So this is advisor to Richard Nixon, and I'm just going to read the second paragraph. Want to know what this was really all about? The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalising both heavily, we could disrupt those communities, we could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Actual quote from the person that advised Richard Nixon, who started the war on drugs. And then you have the prison incarceration. Again, in the USA, this kind of carries over to most of our countries that tend to follow the USA's lead. White, Latino, black. Every study, I don't have the numbers on the usage rates of just every drug in every community is roughly equal. Usually lower in the black community. Probably because they're scared shitless of being thrown in prison by just carrying it on them because they get stopped all the time. And yet, Boom. Most of those black people in prison are there for drug use, or carrying drugs, or possession, or being in a house with someone else that had drugs and being thrown in prison. So that's today. It's still happening. It's just less overt. It's now the cultural norm that we all believe drugs are bad and they will ruin your life, so we have to criminalise them to save people from themselves, and so it's okay that people get thrown in prison for it. But the reason that began was because they wanted to throw black people in prison for it, or make Chinese people stop having sex with white women, or whatever. It's not everything, but it's what starts this process of the war on drugs being a cultural paradigm-based thing that you'll notice of all this conversation, nothing has been said at any point about the science of drug use and how they affect humans and the consequence of using them. There is science there. Very little of it, because it's been illegal for 40 years to do science on most of them. But there is some science. But no one in politics gives a shit. No one looks at it, because it's a political media thing, and it's a feedback loop of the media paints an image. Scientists use the media to show, look how dangerous MDMA is, people are overdosing on it. The media says, look, yeah, that's right. And it just... So that's that. Any questions on that? Does anyone want to...
Yeah, the only comment I would make is just the misuse of the word racism. There's prejudice, but racism is very different. In the US, there's still a lot of...
I literally was aimed at Chinese and
that's
blacks.
There's prejudice, there's racism.
Yeah.
Okay, we got left here.
Yeah.
But there's a big... No, it's all right. There's a big difference between racism and prejudice.
That's racism.
Yeah, well... yeah,
totally
I'm just
racism.
saying. No, you've got to look at the definition of the word racism. So you think of people that are another race is less than you are. We're not. People say that we're very.
Okay, but are you saying someone needs to literally say, I think that race is less than me in order to be racist, or just act like it because they're acting like it?
No, taking advantage of people and mistreating people. So the US is heavily more racist. People say Australia is a racist culture. It's actually very not. We do have a small amount, but we are very prejudiced. We mistreat colours, we mistreat women, we mistreat...
This is like really
nitpicking.
Nitpicking words. I disagree, but
it's not those words we misuse a lot, because racism, we don't really sit there and go, well, you're black, I can't touch the same glass as you, and things like that. We are misusing a word a lot where... I'm not saying we're not xenophobia as prejudiced assholes, I'm saying the word is being changed and misused a lot.
If everyone understands it that way, then we're not misusing
Yeah, but here we are.
Okay.
How do we change this perception?
Good question. Did someone say something? I heard the question. I thought someone yelled out. No. Good question. I definitely don't have the answer. My approach to it is literally, this is why I wanted to give this talk, is because I was sick of watching the media just say shit. And the reason this matters to me is because until 25, this is why the first slides was the prohibitionist propaganda. I believed it. I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke. I did not use drugs. Didn't use drugs. I hated drugs my entire life until I met enough people that broke this spell of believing that if you use drugs, you're a loser. You will lose your job. You will start stealing to feed your addiction. If you use drugs once, you will become addicted. I believed it. Not overtly, but just that concept fed my action. Which sort of goes back to that first of the questions I asked. No one here thinks drugs are bad, but a lot of you haven't used them. In my transition phase, I was the same. I was like, I don't think they're bad, but like I'm scared of them, and they're illegal, and they must be illegal for a reason. There's dangers. And I think breaking people out of this unstated belief pattern, which has been fed by misinformation and lies from the media and from politicians, is an important first step to changing the laws and allowing scientific research to happen to inform us so that we can make informed decisions. For example, knowing that alcohol is probably far more dangerous than just about every illegal drug, and nicotine almost certainly. And when you know that the drugs that everyone uses recreationally all the time without thinking are more dangerous than the illegal ones, that changes things quite a lot. Now, I say that as chemicals, if you had a pure chemical, but the problem is we can't just access the pure chemicals because they're illegal. So we have to buy something off someone, we have to trust that it's what they say it is. That's the real danger. That's why people are dying of MDMA in festivals, because, and this was actually a new thing I learned the other day, I hadn't thought about it, because of the increased police presence outside festivals, people are scared to take their drugs into the festival. They may get caught. So they carry their own drugs in. So they have to buy it in the festival. So they're buying it from people they've never met, with suppliers they know nothing about. That's why more people are dying, because those suppliers are potentially cut with who knows what, and then if they see police around, because there's police everywhere now, they're like, shit, take 2 of them, boom, death. Don't do that. Allow people to buy pure MDMA of those quantities from a chemist, and they will use it safely. More safely than that, anyway.
I just challenge the thing that the drugs are dangerous. It's the misuse that's dangerous. Because we've got a problem in New South Wales, obviously, with the lockout laws and a variety of other things. But the problem is it's not the alcohol. Because you've got alcohol in every 7-Eleven across Asia, in New Zealand, it's in every Coles and Woolworths, there's entire aisles. It's people's attitude towards it. Like in Germany, if you see 2 people having a fight that's alcohol fueled, 2 guys will wander over and smack them in the head and go, what the hell are you doing? You're going to ruin it for everybody. Here in Australia, we rubberneck and just watch happily, and this is one of the reasons that we needed to bring the laws in, was because you can't outlaw idiots. Mm-hmm. So you go after the alcohol, yet everywhere else, and Shanti and I have been through 30 countries together, alcohol is so commonly available everywhere and barely abused. I mean, and to that extent, the other things you're talking about, drugs. You go to places like Cambodia, Thailand, everything, you've got Viagra and everything sitting next to condoms on the 7-Elevens. It's about the abuse and misuse of the things. It's like, and I don't want to start a fight with anybody, it's like saying guns don't kill people, people kill people. Yes, if they didn't have the guns, I get that, but realistically it's people's attitude to using any tool or misusing any tool, whether it be drugs, alcohol, guns, cars, driving badly. It's about how we use anything.
I'll go into addiction.
And so on, yeah, addiction.
So you brought it up a couple of times now. What I was interested in is the distinction between illegal consumption, illegal possession. But I heard from people I know in scientific fields, it also means illegal research as well. So when they're illegal, say MDMA is illegal, that also prohibits genuine research and development to this. They have to go through all these rigmarole. Is that correct, or am I?
Generally, in order to be able to do research on MDMA, you will need special permission from the regulatory bodies. Like that's clearly the case. And so this is why, when I was in the USA, yeah, of course, because it's illegal to have MDMA, so you can't do research on it if you can't have it.
The TGA follows the FDA, and the FDA thankfully is moving a lot faster with some of the research, so the TGA is allowing
MDMA
a lot of
finally
MDMA stuff at the moment.
But like we had the first research on LSD with brain scans just in the past like 3 or 4 years or something, after 40 years of nothing. The most powerful drug we've ever known in terms of potential, nothing. It's like mind-boggling.
Cure depression, you know, it's insane.
Psychedelics have so much potential for curing addiction. So like all this, the drug war, oh my god, people being addicted to drugs, we've got to save them. Well, let's illegalize all the drugs that might help them. The psychedelics have amazingly powerful capability of changing your brain to step out of things like addictions and thought patterns and whatever.
So how is it happening that some of this current research, which is turning positive, how is it now coming back and being accepted?
I think 2 things: the internet and this information coming out. I wouldn't have stopped believing what I believed if it wasn't for my ability to go to Erowid. That's what I haven't added to my slides. I meant to put Erowid on every single corner. Erowid, EROWID. It is a non-profit vault of drug first-hand reports of what it feels like and what happened. Analysis of the science behind it. It's just a database of information about every drug that's ever been thought of. It's amazing.
So do you know who's credited with the whole LSD being accepted?
So
this very famous woman who did the whole microdosing for a year and wrote a book of like the year I didn't want to kill my children or my husband.
Yeah.
And she was on Oprah, and that created literally global awareness.
Up a bit.
And a lot of everyone from politicians were like,
because this is happening. This is happening in a lot of ways. The microdosing thing. There's a whole renaissance around psychedelics now. So I think it's the internet's allowed the communication, which has allowed people to get interested, which has got things happening.
You just got to get it out there. You've got to get it out there somehow.
And then also MAPS. So MAPS is the Multidisciplinary Association